Senator Obama, you have Bill Clinton's former national security advisor, State Department policy director, and Navy secretary, among others, advising you. With relatively little foreign policy experience of your own, how will you rely on so many Clinton advisors and still deliver the kind of break from the past that you're promising voters?
Well, you know, I am...
I want to hear that.
Do I hear that? Well, Hillary, I'm looking forward to you advising me as well.
To some of the viewers, Senator Clinton and Senator Obama did not say anything about how they were going to vote until they appeared on the floor of the Senate, voted. They were among the last people to vote. And I think that the importance of this is, they cast the right vote, and I applaud them for that. But the importance of this is, they're asking to be President of the United States. And there is a difference between making clear, speaking to your followers, speaking to the American people about what you believe needs to be done. And I think all of us have a responsibility to lead on these issues, not just on Iraq, but on health care, on energy, on all the other issues.
I'm going to give both of them a chance to respond to you, Senator Obama.
Well, look, I think it is important to lead. And I think, John, the fact is that I opposed this war from the start. So you were about 4.5 years late on leadership on this issue. Because while I was working on those streets, watching those folks see their jobs shipped overseas, you were a corporate lawyer sitting on the board of Walmart. I was fighting these fights. I was fighting these fights.
You talked about Ronald Reagan being a transformative political leader. I did not mention his name.
Your husband did.
Well, I'm here. He's not.
Okay, well, I can't tell who I'm running against sometimes.
Look, I understand that because that's the textbook Washington game. That's how our politics has been taught to be played. That's the lesson that she learned when the Republicans were doing that same thing to her back in the 1990s. So I understand it, and when you're running for the presidency, then you've got to expect it, and, you know, you've just got to kind of let it, you know. That's what you got to do.
They kept on saying, well, you know, he would be a fine vice president. That would be a formidable team with Clinton at the top and Obama in second place. Now, first of all, with all due respect, I've won twice as many states as Senator Clinton. I've won more of the popular vote than Senator Clinton. I have more delegates than Senator Clinton. So I don't know how somebody who's in second place is offering the vice presidency to the person who's in first place. President Bill Clinton, back in 1992, when he was being asked about his selection for vice president, he said, the only criteria, the most important criteria for vice president is that that person is ready if I fell out in the first week. Now, they have been spending the last 2-3 weeks. You remember with that advertisement with a phone call, getting all the generals to say, well, we're not sure he's ready. I'm ready on day one. He may not be ready yet. But I don't understand. If I'm not ready, how is it that you think I should be such a great vice president? Do you understand that? John McCain likes to say that he'll follow bin Laden to the gates of hell, but he won't even follow him to the cave where he lives.
If you don't adopt the health care plan that Senator Obama mandates, he's going to fine you. Now, Senator Obama, I'd still like to know what that fine's going to be. And I don't think that Joe right now wants to pay a fine when he is seeing such difficult times in America's economy.
And I'm happy to talk to you, Joe, too, if you're out there. Here's your fine, $0. You won't pay a fine because as I said in our last debate, and I'll repeat, John, I exempt small businesses from the requirement.
Hey, get out of here.
That's the most persistent fly I've ever seen. Nice.
Now, where were we? That was pretty impressive, wasn't it? I got the second.
We cannot sustain. Oops.
Was that my, Oh, goodness. That's all right. All of you know who I am. But I'm sure there's somebody back there that's really nervous right now.
Why did you wait days to come out and express that outrage? It seems like the action is coming out of New York and the Attorney General's office. It took you days to come public with Secretary Geithner and say, look, we're outraged. Why did it take so long?
It took us a couple of days because I like to know what I'm talking about before I speak.
Your critics will say on Capitol Hill that you want gas prices to go higher because you have said before that will wean the American people off fossil fuels onto renewable fuels. How do you respond to that?
Ed, just from a political perspective, do you think the President of the United States going into re-election wants gas prices to go up higher? Is there anybody here who thinks that makes a lot of sense?
Jeb, Mr. President.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Mr. President, a year ago, I had an opportunity to speak to you about the national debt. Mr. President, shortly after that conversation a year ago, the Republicans proposed a budget, and unfortunately, I believe that budget was ignored. The old annual deficits under Republicans have now become the monthly deficits under Democrats. The national debt, this is what I don't understand, Mr. President. After that discussion, your administration proposed a budget that would triple the national debt over the next 10 years. Surely you don't believe 10 years from now we will still be mired in this recession. Now, very soon, Mr. President, you're due to submit a new budget. And my question
Jim,
is...
I know there's a question in there somewhere, because you're making a whole bunch of assertions, half of which I disagree with, and I'm having to sit here listening to them. At some point, I know you're going to let me answer.
That's the question. You are soon to submit a new budget, Mr. President. Will that new budget, like your old budget, triple the national debt and continue to take us down the path of increasing the cost of government to almost 25% of our economy? That's the question, Mr. President.
Jim, with all due respect, I've just got to take this last question as an example of how it's very hard to have the kind of bipartisan work that we're going to do, because the whole question was structured as a talking point for running a campaign. Now, look, let's talk about the budget once again, because I'll go through it with you line by line. The fact of the matter is that when we came into office, the deficit was $1.3 trillion. 1.3. So when you say that suddenly I've got a monthly budget that is higher than the annual, or a monthly deficit that's higher than the annual deficit left by the Republicans, that's factually just not true. And you know it's not true. And don't get me wrong. I consider Republicans patriots who love this country just as much we do.
Tell us about your plan for nuclear war with Russia.
I'm sorry. Who's that back there? What the heck are you talking about? I don't know anything about that plan. I don't know what you've been reading. See, he thought happy hour started earlier.
You kind of screwed up my ending, but that's okay. That's okay. And we've got free speech in this country, which is great too.
Mr. President, have you looked at your pension? Have you looked at your pension?
I've got to say.
Mr. President, have you looked at your pension?
You know, I don't look at my pension. It's not as big as yours, so it doesn't take as long.
Let me give you some. Let me give you some advice.
I don't check it that often.
Let me give you some advice. And there was no demonstration involved. It was a terrorist attack, and it took a long time for that to be told to the American people. Whether there was some misleading or instead whether we just didn't know what happened, I think you have to ask yourself, why didn't we know?
The day after the attack, Governor, I stood in the Rose Garden and I told the American people and the world that we were going to find out exactly what happened, that this was an act of terror, and I also said that we're going to hunt down those who committed this crime. And then a few days later, I was there greeting the caskets coming into Andrews Air Force Base and grieving with the families. And the suggestion that anybody in my team, whether the Secretary of State, our UN ambassador, anybody on my team would play politics or mislead when we've lost 4 of our own, Governor, is offensive. That's not what we do. That's not what I do as president. That's not what I do as commander-in-chief.
I think it's interesting. The president just said something which is that on the day after the attack, he went to the Rose Garden and said that this was an act of terror. That's what I said. You said in the Rose Garden, the day after the attack, it was an act of terror. It was not a spontaneous demonstration. Is that what you're saying?
Please proceed, Governor.
I want to make sure we get that for the record, because it took the president 14 days before he called the attack in Benghazi an act of terror.
Get the transcript.
He did, in fact, sir. So let me call it an act of terror.
Can you say that a little louder, Candy?
He did call it an act of terror.
I have no more campaigns to run. My only agenda, I know because I won both of them.